I'm a parent as well, and so this whole father-son relationship, and I have a dad, of course. All those values. I mean, what he did with it to make it about these kind of about those relationships and to do it so strongly. And the characters are so strong, right? They're so the motivations are very clear, and it's the best animated film I've ever worked on in terms of story, and it was the most fun experience I've had in like 20 years of working on films, right? I chose Pinocchio because the daycare of our kid was on the way to Pinocchio studio and not Wendell Wild One. And because I was really torn, I'm a huge fan of Henry Selick's, right? I worked with him in Coraline. I love his work and his energy, and I really wanted to work with Henry again. But then, it just didn't work out. It would have been a nightmare just logistically.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Kingdom of Dreams podcast, The Making of Stories. I'm your host, Jawad Mir. Today, my guest is stop-motion animator Jan Erik Maas, who has worked on Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio that came out a few years back. It was an exciting and wonderful conversation. Jan is a wonderful guy. We talked about work. We talked about how he got on Pinocchio, his life, just very generic stuff sometimes, very cool and calm conversation. Talked about behind the scenes stuff, the scene that he worked on, and the challenges that he went through for the film. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Jan Erik Maas for Pinocchio.
I'm
That's
I'm very impressed by your work. I haven't really watched anything yet, but just from looking at the documentaries and stuff,
Oh,
I
thank you, man.
respect it looks very cool the work you do, and it's yeah, you're making the world a better place. I love it.
I
I
think we
will watch.
all. Sorry, go on.
I will absolutely watch a lot of the films.
I appreciate that, man. Look, I think we are artists always make world a better place in different ways. I mean, the stories that you are involved in, especially what we're here to talk about today, Pinocchio,
Yeah,
Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, based on the original book. I mean, it's a remarkable piece of cinema, but it's a very moving story, and stories have massive impacts on people that sometimes we never know.
right.
So you're in the same boat, so kudos to you too.
Yeah, I always it's one of those I always think I always wish I could do more to make, more activism, I would say, in my work. I always wanted to, and I ended up, playing with puppets all day as a career.
So I will tell you that I saw the very just kind of give you a history of Pinocchio. The very first Pinocchio I ever saw was Disney's Pinocchio that came out way back. I probably saw it in the 80s and the 90s again. One of probably in my view at the time when I saw it, I didn't know it was based on a book. It was one of my favorite Disney classics. Like, just about a boy who wants to be a wooden boy who wants to be a real boy. And then AI, artificial intelligence, came out. I don't know if you've seen that, the Steven Spielberg and Stanley Kubrick one, which is a similar concept of this robotic boy who wants to be a real boy.
Right,
And
yeah.
then, yeah, yeah. And then the Pinocchio you worked on came out, and Robert Zemeckis' Pinocchio came out. So as
Yeah.
much as I'm a huge fan of Robert Zemeckis, I still haven't seen that film because it looked pretty much identical to the animated film.
Yeah,
And
same. I have not watched it. I somehow didn't feel any interest in watching it.
yeah, I so that was the same feeling that I had, but I saw Guillermo's film and Mark's film and I absolutely loved it. And then I rewatched it this morning along with that 30-minute or 36-minute behind the scene.
Mhm.
It is such an amazing piece of film and there's so many things in that film that weren't in the quote unquote Disney classic. I don't know if
Right.
it was actually in the book, but kudos to you and your team. You guys did a remarkable job not just in animation, but in storytelling and human emotions.
Yeah, thank you. I think to me, I really love, and I have to confess, I've never read the original book, the
Hmm.
Carlo Collodi book. I only knew the Disney version from way back, same, and so I went into it. I mean, I knew the rough structure and what happens sort of, he wants to be a real boy. He and it's always called Pinocchio, right?
Mm.
So the story is more centered around him, and he goes to Candyland, and he's sort of naughty, and he's got all these trials and challenges, and in the end, it's all sort of happy ending. And I love what Guillermo did with it, right? Like what where he took it, which is for me. I always thought it could have easily have been called Geppetto, right? Because really, like in this Pinocchio version, I always felt the biggest story arc, the biggest obstacles were Geppetto's,
Mm.
and this whole, and I'm a parent as well, and so this whole father-son relationship, and I have a dad, of course. All those values. I mean, what he did with it to make it about these kind of about those relationships, and to do it so strongly, and the characters are so strong, right? They're so, the motivations are very clear, and it's the best animated film I've ever worked on in terms of story, and it was the most fun experience I've had in like 20 years of working on films, right? And
Wow.
and not just because it was a good story, but also, I mean, there's other
The,
things that contributed to it
the
as well. Like
people you
this,
work with, right? Like the
people were there, the
team.
studio, Shadow Machine, the studio where we did the film. It was a really nice place to work. They really treated people well, and then working with Mark, especially, Guillermo was sort of remote directing, throughout COVID and all that stuff. He wasn't around really much. I met him like twice. Um, but Mark was extremely was amazing to work with, really. Like, I mean, we can talk about him and all that stuff later, but anyway, yeah. So I think the what he did with Pinocchio, yeah, it was just beautiful to work on such a strong story, and I was really lucky that I got um, involved early in the shoot. The animation movies usually ramp up with just a few people starting the testing, the development, and then it grows and grows and grows. And I got hired pretty early on Pinocchio, which was really lucky, and I was really happy about that. And I got two really good sequences. I was cast basically on those sequences as an animator, and they were like, some of the best work I think I ever did, and it was really fun.
That's
Really,
amazing,
really,
man. Sorry,
yeah.
go on.
No, they were. I mean, so I was just thinking about it. The so the first thing so this is like was a really special thing as well, was that I got to animate basically a whole scene in the movie by myself. Basically, usually you have to share scenes with other animators, right? So because simply the scheduling, right? Like the usually some people do the return shots, for example, because you're in like on one set, and the other animator does all the return shots on another set that is identical, right, with another set of puppets, for example. And often it's just other people you share the scene with, shots from different animators sort of seamlessly linked together. And this was the first time ever that it happened to me, that I got basically to animate a whole sequence. It's the sequence where they walk through the woods, the birch woods sequence, where they walk back from the meeting with the Podesta and the mayor and stuff like that. And the Podesta wants to send Pinocchio to school and all that stuff, right? So and Geppetto's all upset, and they're walking through the woods, and that whole sequence where in the end, it ends with this climax where Geppetto says, "You're such a burden," and Pinocchio's like, "Wow." He gets left with this bomb in his lap, or this huge emotional hit. They like going at each other. They're really emotionally stabbing at each other there. He's like, I don't want to be like Carlo. Carlo's dead. and And Geppetto goes, you're such a burden, and and that sets off for me. That is what one of the most important sequences in the film, where it sets off why Pinocchio leaves, and he wants to prove himself to his dad, and and Geppetto realizes that yeah. Anyway,
No,
so
no.
that sequence was very rare that you get to animate, and it's like I don't know 2 minutes long or something. And I worked on it like a year, I guess. I think. Yeah.
That's such a great thing to put in perspective, and I'm glad you mentioned that because not a lot of people know how much time and effort goes into animation, let alone traditional animation, then let alone stop motion animation, right? So it's a very, very tedious and complicated and long process. And you talked about the scene about the burden. For me, that was the gist of the story. Like the film, you said the film could have been called this. I think it could have been called Burden because that's literally what the
Right.
film was about, was burden. And when he says that, his nose didn't grow, I mean, and then it's like a stab in the heart, right? Like, oh crap, so they was telling the truth.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it was a very meaningful and powerful scene, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate animation, let alone stop motion animation. I've directed a stop motion film as well once, a long time
Wow.
ago, about 15 years. It was like a short, it was like
Yeah.
2 minutes long. But I know what the amount of effort and that texture and that feel that you have
Yeah.
that goes into it. And then I was watching on the making of that you guys actually designed these characters on 3D printers and then
Mm.
basically printed them and then sort of took out and put them in the real world. Fabulous, just remarkable. I'm so glad I saw that making of. I mean, it just puts
Yeah.
things in perspective, even though if you know, right? So it's incredible to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how technical you want to get, but we can talk about the technical
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
aspects of stuff.
I would love to. So before we jump into that, I just would love to know very
Yeah.
briefly, how did you get onto the project?
Oh
And
yeah.
then and then just a little bit of a history of what was the catalyst in your life that brought you into this world of animation or stop motion animation?
Well, start there. I I had a really cool art teacher in high school who showed me a few animated films. I don't know, as part of art class and stuff like that. I was
Shh.
and he there's this one movie that sticks with me. Have you ever seen Balance?
No.
It's a short film. It's like from the 80s. I think it won an Academy Award for Best Animated short back then. It's like 80 in the 80s somewhere, somewhere maybe 91 or something. I can't remember. But it was made in Germany back in at one of the art universities there, and it's called Balance. It's just these figures standing on this square plate hovering in midair, and they
Mm.
walk around, and the whole thing sort of shifts whenever they move, right? Because it has to stay in balance. And anyway, it's a really powerful. It's got a lot of symbolism and a lot of the beauty in animation where you can. It's so open to. It lends itself so much to project your own um, ideas,
Interpretations.
yeah, and values into it, right? Because it's not real; it's animation, and it makes that connection a lot of times easier. Anyway, that movie really stuck with me, and I I knew I wanted to do some kind of art stuff, and then but I couldn't decide whether I wanted to do graphic design or architecture or blah blah blah. And then I sort of at some point it realized like, hey, there's animation, and you can kind of animate anything, right? You can and so I went to a, a foundational studies class in London, and that's where I met like some really cool people who did animation in the basement. Like the animation department was in the basement, and and usually you're supposed to like try a little bit of everything. You do a little bit of live action stuff, a little bit of documentary stuff, you do a bit of sound stuff, and it's a sort of orientational year. And I just stayed in the basement and did animation, and from then on I was like hooked. Um, and I always loved animation and especially the classic Disney things. And I I also early on watched all the Jan Swankmajer films. and they that was like really influential on me. He uses real things and the real objects. It's not all just hand drawn stuff, right? Like it's and that's how I think that's why I ended up in stop motion, um, because I always like making things more than I was never that good at drawing. I mean, I'm okay now. I think I've worked very, very hard to get decent at drawing, but I'm not. There were kids around me back growing up who were just naturals, right? Like who were just like they just do it all
Yeah,
the time. They're
yeah.
just talented, and it's like I was never one of those kids. But I guess yeah. Anyway, that's how I slid into this animation thing, and then I was just lucky. I think that I had parents who supported me, and that I just managed to slide from one job to the next, and that the paths never sort of stopped. Um, and it eventually led me to come to the US in like 2008 to work on Coraline. And Anthony, who you interviewed, he got me over to work on Coraline, and then I fell in love with Portland in the Northwest, and sort of after that tried to stay here for as much as I could. I first had to go back and forth, because I first was here on a work visa, and they kicked me back out, and then I would come back on the next film for a bit, and but I eventually got a green card and managed to stay, and that was a big change for me to be able to make this home here, and then yeah, I did like a few more Leica films after I got the green card, but then I knew I could also work other places, and at that point I got married and we had a kid on the way, and the commute out to Leica from where we live here in Portland is pretty gruesome. It's pretty long car commute out there and back, and those with families who still work at Leica, they all move out there to you know out out there to be close. So if I had, yeah, right now with family and kids and stuff, I could not work there because I would never see my kids. It's
Yeah.
just so I knew that I wanted to leave Leica and do something in Portland, and yeah, and then Wendell Wild and Pinocchio were sort of in the works, and knew about both films starting up, and so I knew that I would that I knew I was going to work on one of them, and so it ended up being
Nice.
Pinocchio, and it finally being and it just be I chose Pinocchio because the daycare of our kid was on the way to Pinocchio studio and not Wendell and Wild one, and because I was really torn. I'm a huge fan of Henry Selick's, right? I worked with him on Coraline. I love his work and his energy, and I really wanted to work with Henry again. And but then it just didn't work out. It would have been a nightmare just logistically. So yeah,
Well,
and
the universe was trying to pull you in the other direction, right?
right, yeah, yeah. So
That's
that's how
awesome,
I
man.
ended up on.
Yeah. Sorry,
That,
sorry, go
that's
on.
no, no, that's that. So that's how I ended up on Pinocchio, and I mean, stop motion is such a the feature film stop motion world is a really small, really, really small community. Um, I don't know. My guess is like this, like 100 people, 150 people in the world who do this kind of stuff at that level, right?
Mm,
And so and a lot of it has like Portland has become a hub for stop motion, not mostly because of Leica, because Leica has been um very consistent, and it's and employed a lot of people over the years, and so Portland has become this sort of hub, which is one of the reasons why then Wendell and Wild and Pinocchio came to Portland to set up shop here. So yeah.
yeah. Laika came out around 2008 or 9, right? Around that time?
Yeah, I mean they
Or
got started before then, but they started Coraline, I believe, in 2006 or 7.
because I remember when it was first announced, I just now that you mentioned the name I remember telling myself, okay, there's a new company, even though I have nothing to do in animation. I
Yeah.
should apply for a job there, and I think I did. Nothing ever came out of it because I
Yeah.
had no experience whatsoever at the time.
Uh,
But let's to go to Pinocchio and the technicalities of it,
yes.
man. Like,
Yeah.
tell me about like what was the most technical thing at the scene, part of the scene that you did, or anything that you can talk about that was extremely challenging to you, whether it was through the work or through the emotions of the work, or or a bit of both.
Um, well, so I mean, Guillermo loves to move the camera. He does a lot of moving camera stuff, and that's always a huge pain in the butt for stop motion animation because we generally have to shoot on single frames because the camera is moving. Otherwise, you get the weird motion jitter stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's always much harder to shoot on ones than on twos. That's one challenge, and also you gotta. It's just really complex, right? You gotta the get the characters in the right positions at the right time. You have to pre-plan it all. It's a huge complicated just to set up a long tracking camera shot or something like that. And
Right.
um and so that's just like technically hard, difficult to do. And then we talked about this scene in the Birchwoods, like they were, going at each other emotionally, and when you're animating you have to sort of be in that moment, and we're sort of actors, not quite, but yeah, we are. We have to be emotionally
Yeah.
there. We have to give life to these characters and emotions, and it's just, you do that for months. You're like having a screaming match with some two characters for months, right? Like it's emotionally draining, right? And at the end of and then right after that sequence kind of was finished, I think I got, and then I did another sequence. I was given a bunch of shots with the Volpe, with where Volpe sort of turns evil with Pinocchio, and he chops off his nose with a sword.
Yeah.
Uh, Again, was just sort of a lot of evil, anger, emotions in this sort of scene. I was like, I just want to animate a happy, something funny, you know. It was that, so emotionally that was kind of hard to stay in that, and um yeah to yeah to to pull off these the body language, and yeah, to keep up the energy uh consistently in those, I mean, you
Right.
have the director and the directors and supervisors and people that will help you do that, right? And if you veer off track, then they'll bring you back on track, right? So
Yeah. You talked about, and and I've experienced this too with stop motion. It's a little bit different. Is that when you're working on something it's full of fun, you naturally are reacting in a more of a,
mm,
fun way, like you're happy and whatnot. But
mm,
when you're working on something dark or something serious, it takes a toll on you. So these scenes, the emotional or the dark scene that you're talking about, was there in this film or in general, do you ever pick out moments to be in that kind of a zone from your personal life? Like, just to kind of feel that, bring that emotion out, that anger.
um I mean, so yeah, I guess I think it wasn't really for me. There isn't like I didn't have a similar conversation with my dad ever, thank God. But you know, I think you draw from life, right? You draw from your life experiences or others, you know, things you've seen in your life. So I think you definitely go there emotionally. And the good thing also is it's like you have the voice performances of the actors to listen to,
Mm,
for weeks, for months, and if they're good performances, then that really, really, really
yeah,
helps you stay.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and so. yeah, yeah, you definitely, I think you definitely have to have to go there and or try to go there, right? Like I I don't know. For Pinocchio, it was I think because there were, there were pretty strong moments and pretty but they're also very, as we talked about it earlier, I think the roles, the emotional arcs of the characters are so strong and so
Yeah,
clean that it wasn't that hard to jump into that.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that makes sense. And was there, I'll get to technicalities again. I just want to talk about a little bit more on an emotional level. You know, we, I truly believe that, at least for me, when it comes to making the films that you make, or traveling the world that you would travel for work, whatnot, you learn more about yourself than anything else, right? Or you learn about your certain past through your present, or you learned about something, how to deal with something in the potential future through your present. Working on Pinocchio, the intensity of the relationship between father and son, or any other relationships, did you, let's talk about father and son. Did you understand something that you probably didn't understand about your father's approach when growing up because of Pinocchio? It kind of changed that perspective, or helped change that perspective at least.
Um, you're going deep. Um,
If you're okay with it, I don't
okay.
have to.
I can no, so that's fine. It's okay. I haven't I think um wow, lots of thoughts. It's hard to put that into words. Um I I don't think it changed. I mean, there was no revelation for now for my dad and me relationship. Um but I think um I've definitely, I mean, for my own, like my own career. So my dad's is a radiologist. He's a doctor. He, very much, I would say, a workaholic, and and a sort of academia science person.
Mm,
And I I'd have to go and call him and really, go there and talk with him about it. But I always had the feeling that he was a little terrified that I tried to go into the arts, and I am still, you know, um, struggling with my career and all that stuff, right? Like I think it's less stable, and it's you never really quite know what the next film is going to be, and there's a lot of challenges, right? Like with this career path, um, and not just financially, but also job security wise, and I ended up like halfway around the world. I'm not sure he's happy about that. Um, but yeah, so I think there was always for me an aspect where of course you want to make your parents proud. I think I want that acceptance and that um you yearn for that acceptance and that how you say appreciation from your parents,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's natural. It's like who we are, like it's how we work. Um, and I think so. For him, again, coming from academia and stuff like that. So for him, I don't think he really ever watched any of the films I've worked on, which is kind of sad. I made him watch Pinocchio when he visited, and he visited a couple of years, no, last year. He visited me for the very first time in 20 years. Uh, at a place where I lived and doing my work. So it was the first time sadly the Pinocchio shoot was over, but I took him over to the studio and we looked at some of the sets that are still there. And, you got to hold the puppet and, it was like cabinet with all the awards and stuff. And, that was a big, big moment for him and for us. And it was really nice. And then I made him
That's
watch the film and, that was, yeah, that was, so I think, and so one of the reasons he came to visit was because he finally retired and I feel like since he retired, I feel like I have a different dad, I, but it's great. And hopefully he'll come visit more, but
Mm, yeah. No, I think first of all, thank you so much for sharing something personal. When you told me your dad was a radiologist, the first thing came to my mind before you even said what you said was, without stereotyping, majority of the people who are in the medical field, you know, they prefer their child to go not necessarily in the medical field, but something of that nature, like in terms of
sure.
education, in terms of status, if you want to call it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I get that, and I think it's just one of those things, and I feel that, you know, our generation probably the parents, I mean, my parents were very supportive too, but that level of understanding that I may have or you may have for our kids in terms of career path is going to be a lot different than it was back then. And I'm sure
Oh yeah.
for our parents, for them, their parents, it was different. So that evolves every generation, but but I also think if there is not, because you said the word acceptance, if we don't feel any kind of resistance, for the lack of a better word, we
Yeah.
may not work harder as we already have. Then there's like everything is like a walk in the park, and then you're like, okay, well, it is what it
Mhm.
is. So I think
No,
it's a double-edged sword, right?
oh yeah, and to my dad's credit, he never tried to talk me out of what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
And I love him for it. I'm deeply grateful. He's always supported me to doing, you know, and to doing what I wanted to do. So there was never a question of he never sat me down and tried to like get me to to enroll in med school or something. Right? Um, and and yeah, I mean, I can, being a parent now with two kids is amazing, right? And it changes your perspective completely. Like
hmm
and I can already see how different the two daughters are. How and they will go very different paths. I can tell right now. They're just different, and 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 I can't. There's no way I'm gonna like try to mess with that. Yeah,
yeah. No, and you're gonna have another different perspective in about,
yeah.
when they're teenagers. So it's a constant
Oh, I'm
growth and
terrified.
evolvement. Yeah. Well, enjoy those years now because it's going to get terrifying afterwards for sure. No, no, it always gets worse, you think, but then every 5 years something else happens, and you're like, oh, the previous 5 years were a lot better. So it's like an ever, we're always ungrateful for what we have, and we're always looking for
Yes,
something else.
for sure, for
Uh,
sure. Yeah,
Working with Mark and Guillermo,
yeah,
I mean, you mostly
yeah,
worked with Mark, obviously,
yeah, yeah.
but just talk to me about that relationship and that experience. Whether it's pertaining to a certain story that you want to share, which would be nice if there is one, or just
Oh,
overall, general experience.
oof. I mean, it's been a while already that we were shooting. Well, I mean, yeah, this, it was funny. Oh gosh, I can't remember. It's well, first of all, lots of thoughts. Let me try to get them in order.
No problem.
Um, I think it was really so you like this job, this shoot, this film was really unique. I think because from how deeply Guillermo respects animation and especially I think stop motion. his whole background with special effects and
Mm-hmm.
model making and stuff like that. So you could tell, I mean, I watched a lot of his films, not all, but quite a few, and you can tell that he really respects and appreciates the craft, that goes into these things. And you could tell, like when he walked around the studio, he was like in a candy store. It was like he had such a good time, and he clearly loved the artistry and that, when you and that went throughout the whole shoot. And I think for so us as animators, right, like we've got a lot of insecurities. And if you yeah, of course, like you're only as good as your sort of your last shot. And if you but if somebody, one of your colleagues, or even the director, even better, says something nice about your last shot or whatever, or you're like, whew, you're floating 2 feet above the ground for a month, right? Just because, like, that's how fragile our egos are sometimes, and you just get that little bit of important feedback, and you feel great, and you want to work harder, and you want to give more, and instead of so that's like, so if that's the best situation, right, like where
Sure.
you you feel like you're bringing something to the table. I mean, you're being directed, right? Like there's a script, you have a job to do, and you have to go from A to B with your characters, and there's certain things that the director wants. But you always bring something to the shot or to the thing, and if that gets appreciated, that's great. But that makes you feel like $1 million. It's again, acceptance, right? You you want to try harder, and it's in that feedback loop. I feel that Guillermo and Mark were, and also Brian, the supervisor, Brian Hansen. They were all really good at keeping that going. At least for me, that was my experience on Pinocchio, and I think for most people. And so, and like you have a shoot, it's like you have a certain amount of time and money to do this film, and of course you can't take forever. Uh, so they the director so Pinocchio in that way was a really nice film to work on as well, because it had limited resources, and in a way we had to get the stuff done, right? And so when
Mm.
usually, in the process, you sort of you get your shot briefed with the director, you do like a block, you sketch out a rough uh version of the shot, and then boom, off you go, you animate it, right? That was a situation on Pinocchio. In as you know, with stop motion, is like once you get going, you can't go back. You can't go back and fix things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So stop motion in that way is very unique, that there's a lot of trust needed from the director, because they just have to let you go for like days on end, and then come back and see what you've done. And I mean, with modern technology, and they can sort of do progress checks, right, throughout, maybe once a day or every couple of days. They will come in to your set, and you quickly show them where you're at and what you've done. And so there's a way for them to sort of maybe check a little bit, well, to maybe steer you if you're really going off track. But for most of it, they understand that they have to let you do your thing, which
Mm.
is really special, because you think about CG animation and 2D animation. Anybody can go back months later and, excuse my language, like fuck with your shot, like mess with your animation, right? They can go back and tweak keyframes. They can go back and do all kinds of stuff. They can give it to someone else. They can, you can't do that in stop motion. Like, so there has to be this trust. And, on the end, of course, there's also the nice thing that you, as an animator, you have a lot of ownership of the final product,
Yeah.
which is really special. It's really nice. And, but as I said, like, so and there's no time or money to do a ton of reshoots, right? So they're, as a director, they are in a spot where, like, okay, we have to trust these animators. Like, hopefully we've done enough to get them on the right path. Off they go, right? And we have to trust them, and we kind of, unless it's a complete mess up, we have to sort of buy what they give us at the end, right? So that that I think that makes for a really special relationship in a way.
Mm,
And that was really nice on Pinocchio.
yeah.
There are other jobs I've worked on where you're constantly in fear of you know criticism of you get micromanaged, you have to do rehearsal, you have to do more than just block shoot, you have to sort of block it, rehearse it again, then do it exactly like you did with a couple of very specific changes, and it sort of gets managed to death, right? And it loses some of that energy, and you
In a,
just
in a sense.
sorry.
No, sorry, go on.
No, I'm so I think in that way it was, and I think at least for me it felt like Guillermo understood this process. Mark very well understood the process because he was an animator himself. He worked on, comes from stop motion. So they they were the right people to lead the film, I think.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think I would love for you to talk about, I know how stop motion, the rigs and all that stuff works, but just to talk about a bit about it in depth because, there's so many incredible stop motion films. I mean, I've seen all Wallace and Gromits, I've seen
Yeah,
Chicken Run,
yeah, yeah.
which was the very first, I think, stop motion that I ever saw. I think. No, I saw Nightmare Before Christmas before that. And
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know it was stop motion. I didn't understand the complexities of it. There's Corpse's Bride,
Yeah,
there's so many of them, Caroline, James and the Giant Peach. If you can talk about just for an audience, dumbed down
yeah.
audience who doesn't know what
Of
goes
course.
involved, just generically talk about that, that'd be really cool.
Um, so yeah, so with stop motion, you it we also often call it like straight ahead animation, and it is because you take one picture, you move an object, you take another picture, you move it physically, by hand. It could be a puppet, it could also be cut out on a piece of glass with a camera looking down on it, right? It could be, there's all these different ways to do it, but the thing is that you create the motion in a linear way, and it's as opposed to with drawn animation or computer animation where you sort of make a start drawing and an end drawing, and then you fill in all the things in between, and you sort of, that's how you create the motion. It's still the same principles of creating movement, because it's the difference between the individual pictures that make you feel things move a certain way, fast or slow, or but in stop motion, you go straight ahead. You start with frame one, you go to frame two, you move it a little more, you go to frame three, blah, 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 and so on. And that's how you sort of create your animation. And of course, it gets really complicated um, when you go very realistic, naturalistic, and then things like clothing can make things really complicated because it has to flow in the right way. You have hair, for example. You could have, God forbid, multiple characters, or crowd scenes where you sometimes have 10, 15, 20 characters in one shot that you all have to uh, move one thing at a time, but all at the same time, and you still have to keep track of um, where they came from, where they're going, and you still have to make that one character look really, really sad or angry, and the other character, and then you have it gets complicated when you physical interaction, shoving, pushing, objects interacting physically with each other. It can get super complicated, and luckily we have computers that can help us record what we've done, and you can play it back, and so you can, when I'm animating straight ahead, I always sort of have this sort of little play button, and I can see blah, 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 up to the live frame where I'm right now, all the frames before. So I can see the motion, I can feel the acting, and I can listen to the soundtrack of the voice recording, for example, if it's a dialogue scene. Um, and so when you're animating that way straight ahead, it comes it's like the closest thing in animation to a live performance, I would say.
Yeah.
And as we talked about it before, you have to sort of feel it yourself. You have to sort of listen to the voices, get the tonality right, and emotionally uh, feel it, and then you post the puppet or you make the animation so it expresses that. Um, and it's very hard. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. I think, honestly, like for me, stop motion, when I truly appreciated the most was Wallace and Gromit. There was the short,
Mm.
I think, The Wrong Trousers.
Mm-hmm.
And the character Feathers McGraw, the grand evil villain of all time, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And the scene where the train tracks when are being put together as a train is moving like in such fast speed, to be able to visualize that, how the heck that was done frame by frame. I mean, to me, not to take away anything from any other film, there are some great sequences, but that to me got resonated with me more than anything else. That how much in time and effort and patience is involved in creating
yeah.
something like that. So it is, and
I
kudos
know the
to
scene. Yeah.
you. Yeah, kudos to you guys that you guys do that because it's ridiculous amount of patience. I mean, I think
It-
more than live action for sure.
well, it's funny you use the word patience. I mean, yeah, it's a very weird. Sometimes I have to pinch myself and think like, oh, I've got a really strange job. It's a really weird thing that we're trying to do here. But again, story is the most important aspect of it all, right? Like the if it is a story that resonates with your audience in the end. Um, man, I lost my thought.
No, no, that's fine. You were talking about pinching yourself that, you
Yeah.
know,
Um, no, still haven't got it.
that's
Pinching
okay.
myself. It's a weird job. Hmm. No, go back one more time. What was it?
It's okay. We can come back to it later.
Yeah.
I love the way
The
your camera keeps moving and following you.
It does.
Yeah, it does. It keeps moving. Every time you tilt this way, your camera shifts, and then there you go. It just
Wow.
moved again.
Wow.
You
I
didn't notice that before?
no, I wasn't no.
So,
Oh,
just to sort of, yeah, go ahead.
almost got it. No, you ask. Sorry.
I was just gonna sort of wrap things up, more so on the point of, well, I guess two questions. What is the one thing that you learned about yourself at the end of this film? Whatever that is. It could be something
Mhm.
deep, it could be something silly, and also what's on the plate next, unless you have an NDA that you've signed.
No. Um, well, I I have this thing where I really came out of Pinocchio thinking like reaffirmed in like this work, right, in this job, and I'm like, damn, I love animation, right? Like this is really cool. This is where I want it to be. And then um also mostly because this was so for me, like career wise, right? Like this was sort of the most fun I've had on a film, the most
Sure,
um and the most responsibility, and I feel like recognition in terms of what like in terms of what I was given, the responsibility I was given in the film, with the sequences I got to animate, and I think I was also the first time definitely more one of the most experienced animators on a film, which changes things also, like you yeah, you're getting probably given the more difficult or crucial shots maybe, and maybe you get yeah, and that was a lot of weight, but also feels good, feels nice to be given that to be trusted with that.
Sure.
And before then, a lot of the my experiences at Leica had been sort of different, and so this was really reaffirming that, like, yeah, I love this job and I love this, this is amazing. Um, and then right after we finished Pinocchio, sort of through COVID and everything, we were on a total high, and we won kind of everything that was to win in terms of awards and stuff. And but then, like, sort of work, sort of the bottom fell out of the animation industry, and still is trying to get back on its legs, right? Like, I've been basically unemployed for almost a year. Um, Little bits and bobs here, but I
Yeah.
right now, again, I'm rethinking my career, or it's just like really hard right now. Um,
Yeah.
but there's good stuff. So there's good stuff in the future, in the very near future, hopefully. Guillermo is gonna looks like he's really gonna make another film here in Portland.
Mm.
Um, I mean, you've probably heard a little bit about it. They
No.
are Oh, okay. So I mean, I think I can say um, so he's doing it's called The Buried Giant by Ishiguro. What's his name? Katsuo Ichiguro. The I think it got a Pulitzer Prize. Let me just look it up real quick. Um, it's a definitely a grown up um,
The Buried Giant?
film. Very Giant, Kazuo Ishiguro. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, which is, by the way, a great book. Um, I recommend listening to it. It's really beautiful. His prose, the language is really, really, really nice. Um,
Mm.
that is in development right now at Shadow Machine, and early testing. Um, so hopefully I'm gonna be involved with that a little bit. And then
Nice.
yeah, so it's really, I'm really excited about that, to get involved in it this early on. It's probably not going to start actually shooting until like the fall or something.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
takes a long time to get these things ready. But I've seen the some of the early puppets that they've built for it, and it's amazing. It is like
Nice.
the next level of mechan. So a lot of well, we haven't really talked about the all the technicalities, how Pinocchio was 3D printed, and but some of the characters were mechanical heads and silicone skin and stuff like that. But so the new puppets for the Very Giant are going to be mostly head mechanics, and they're the next level. I've never seen anything like it. So I'm really excited about getting my hands on one of those, and and yeah, it's going to be something else, I think. So very excited about that. Um,
That's good.
yeah, but it is, a long way off.
But
And
we didn't talk about some of the technical, the mechanical heads. If you want to talk about, we've got 5 minutes right now. If you want to talk about that, that'd be really cool to know.
okay, sure. Well, the other thing that's well, just to wrap up what I was doing, I'm actually writing a book right now on animation. That is, it's very technical. It's just a how-to book. It's like tutorials
Mm.
on walking. But I have a publisher, and they want to publish it once I've got it done. so I'm working on that right now, and while I'm sort of unemployed and do a lot of at home kids stuff. Um, so yeah, that's hopefully I've got until the summer or so to finish that, and that's it's taking way too long and sucking up all my energy right now. But it's gonna be good. Um, so go back on the mechanical heads. So you just watched the film, right? Like, so do you remember? Well, you can kind of see, right? So the Pinocchio's face was all replacements, replacement
Mm.
animations, and it sort of pops, and the way it moves, uh, that was, and it was perfect for that character because he's like carved out of wood. It has that. It was such a perfect technique for that character. And then Geppetto, in contrast, he has a silicon face, and so the mouth is moved with a little jaw with a ball joint, and you can crank a little screw in the back of his head to open and close the jaw, and then he has little tiny little joints cast into the silicon of his lips below and above, and then so when he talks, that silicon sort of gets pushed around, right? And as an animator, the animating the mechanical heads is quite different to replacements, because the replacements, sure, you can choose which ones you put on when, but once they're on, you can't move them. And with the silicon, the mechanical heads, you get a very organic, because you can, oh no, you're just looking at your frame and you think, oh no, I want to push that smile a little bit more, and
Right.
you can try it if the mechanics in the head can do it, right? And sometimes you have to go tension them a little more, and to just get that little bit of extra squish, and but the beauty with Geppetto was you so he has a giant mustache, and some of the pedals, the joints in there, you could get in there with your tool, and you could push it up just enough to sort of get the sort of fleshy bit under your eyes, the cheeks, when you smile, for example, they push up a little bit, and you could, if you did it right, you could sort of get that movement out of the silicon, and those are, if you go back and look at the animation again, then it makes these silicon puppets always look more organic than replacement.
And
If you look at,
that's so sorry to interrupt you just briefly, if you don't
yeah,
mind. That's one
no,
of the things that I noticed about the animation, stop motion animation of Pinocchio was it was very different from your typical stop motion animation that I've seen in the past. It was, I mean, first I thought it was there were a lot of computer elements, like, computer animation that kind of enhanced it, but then I saw the BTS and I was like, no, so just to kind of put that in
yeah,
there as we're talking about.
yeah. I mean, one spectrum, you have sort of Leica, who 3D print every face, or use, now they do, or a lot of the time. I mean, there were some exceptions, but and they literally pre-animate the performances, dial it completely in before you even launch. They print those faces, they give those to the animators, and then you sort of go, and you have very little room to maneuver, uh, very little, kind of locked in, right? Because you have to use
Right.
those faces. You can maybe change the timing a little bit, or you know, but that's sort of it. And when you again you have the mechanical heads, I think it lends itself to more spontaneity, and moments that aren't pre-planned, which often are the nuggets, the good bits that often
Yeah.
come.
Yeah.
It goes back to that live performance element of it, I think. At least for me personally, it's way more enjoyable to animate the mechanical heads than the replacement
Yeah.
ones. Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's really cool. And to kind of go back a little bit on your book, I am really glad that you're working on a book because when you work on something that you pass on to others, there's just some special meaning behind it. And obviously it keeps you occupied too, right? And it's
Yeah,
another source of probably small percentage of income, nothing, bestseller type, which I hope it
oh,
does.
well, that'd be great, but like, no, it's a very, very small audience, right? It's just
Yeah.
targeted it's just about walks. It's really very technical. It's, for animators, not just stop
Yeah.
motion animators. I mean, animators in general, hopefully, but it's a very small market. And I'm not gonna get rich doing it.
Yeah,
I'm doing
yeah,
it
yeah.
because I want to pass
But
something on, and and when you're teaching, obviously you have to rethink what you're actually doing, and that's the fun part of it, right? Like I have to rethink, like why am I, what is actually, why am I doing it this way, and or why. So I'm learning a ton. It's really good. It's really great. It's just a lot of work, and right now, well, the best thing I think would be that it would open some doors, um, you know, create new connections for me, or
Dude, that's exactly what we all do is all about. I mean, I won't lie, it was never the reason that I started this podcast, but it sort of has helped me open so many doors and
I bet.
connections.
Yeah.
It's insane, like 282 episodes, and I have made some incredible connections with some incredible people. And has it landed me any work? It almost did. It didn't. No intention, just kind of happened. But yeah, those things make a big impact in the long run, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. No, it's been really fun. And I will keep listening to it and check out your work.
Thanks, man. But you were talking about young animators. I was at Lightbox.
Oh
That's
yeah.
where I met. That's where I met Anthony. So I was with Carlos, who what's his last name? Ha, you know him. He worked on Corpse's Bride.
Carlos, Spanish animator.
Carlos. Yeah. Portuguese.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Carlos Grangle. Carlos Grangle. So I have had him on a few times on the podcast. And then
Oh
I've had Lorna Cook, who directed Spirit Stallion of Cimarron, which I'm not sure if you have seen. It's one of my favorite
yeah, I
films.
do. I have seen it. Yeah, I've done a
So
lot of horse related. I had to do a lot of horse animation, so I definitely checked out that
So
one.
we ended up getting together in LA last time when Lightbox happened, and we went to this ranch where the horse that they had, which was actually bought from a farm in Portland, it was flown over to DreamWorks Animation, and they had the DreamWorks studio for 3 years, and they used that as a reference to draw. And
Yeah.
that horse was sold to this ranch, and we went to see it.
Ah,
And we saw the
so rare.
actual horse. It literally looked identical. And then I met Anthony and a bunch of other people's, also Ian at Lightbox, and then I saw so many young animators, like ridiculous
Yeah.
amount of young animators. So I'm like,
Ah,
there's your audience for the book. Just go to
there you go.
Lightbox.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned horses. I mean, like part of this book is right. It's one part is human walks, the other one is quadrupeds, and I've been like, so I did all the horse animation, most of it in Missing Link. I don't know if you saw Missing Link, the
Yeah,
Leica,
yeah.
and
I have.
and that's when I was first like, okay, I've got to wrap my head around this quadruped motion thing, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, hard, super hard work, but it was great. And on this, the Sphinx character in Pinocchio, that luckily first like early on in the film she was supposed to do a ton of walking, and I thought first that I was going to be the one to do this because of my background with the horse stuff on Missing Link, but yeah, I part of all my research now on the book is stuff like I actually went out and filmed the horse with like 3 cameras, had to try to get it to walk in a straight line, and so I get like back front side view, and it's all going to be part of this thing. But
Nice.
so I would have loved to go there and meet that horse. It would have been really fun. Yeah, I
Great,
agree.
man. Thank you
Thank you. It
so
was
much,
fun.
buddy, for your time. Yes.